Hey there, I'm Becca Scott, and I'm going to teach you how to play Warhammer 40,000 Apocalypse. Warhammer 40,000 Apocalypse is a visually stunning and cinematic game of massed warfare for 2 or more players, set in the war-torn 41st millennium. In Apocalypse, vast armies clash in open war, even as the ground shakes beneath the seismic tread of titans and the relentless bombardment of artillery batteries. In the crucible of these epic conflicts, you must use all your cunning and strategy to lead your mighty legions to victory. The innovative rules for Apocalypse enable you to play massive battles to completion in a matter of hours. Alternating activations also ensure that there is little downtime for players, maintaining the fast-paced and exciting action throughout. Apocalypse is a brand new rule set. It's completely different from Warhammer 40,000, except for the rolling of dice and the miniatures and stuff. A game of Apocalypse is fought over a number of turns, each consisting of 4 distinct phases: the initiative phase, the orders phase, the action phase, and the damage phase. The player that has successfully achieved the mission's victory conditions at the end of the battle wins the game. Victory can be achieved by earning more victory points than your opponent. You do this by controlling critical objectives or eliminating their units during the game, though of course wiping out their entire army will ensure total victory. Apocalypse games are epic clashes fought between mighty armies. The biggest games may include hundreds of miniatures on either side. To play a game of Apocalypse, you must first gather your armies to unleash upon the battlefield. An Apocalypse army is organized into detachments. These are the essential building blocks of an Apocalypse force. There are several different kinds of detachment, but each consists of 1 or more units and is led by a commander. In battle, all the units in your army will move and fight as one in their detachments. Your choice of faction, such as Adeptus Astartes or Aldari, not only determines what units are available to you, but also what additional ability the detachments in your army benefit from. These add a narrative edge that helps distinguish the different ways in which certain factions operate on the battlefield. Each unit has a data sheet that explains the models it can include, how far they can move, the weapons at their disposal, and all of the other information required to use them in battle. Datasheets also include power ratings, enabling opposing players to build grand armies that are roughly equal in strength by matching the combined power rating of all their units. In addition to mustering their forces, each player also constructs a deck of 30 command asset cards. These represent a wide variety of tactical plays, strategic gambits, psychic powers, and more, which you can use to affect the course of the battle. The Warhammer 40,000 Apocalypse starter set includes 300 of these cards, many of which are faction-specific, enabling players to utilize appropriately thematic tactics and strategies in battle. Apocalypse armies are an impressive sight to behold once arrayed for battle, but before the game can continue in earnest, players must first set up their miniatures. When deploying for battle, players alternate selecting a detachment from their army and setting up all of the units in it on the battlefield. However, some units, or even entire detachments, have the ability to be set to one side as tactical reserves instead of on the battlefield, and will arrive later on in the game to potentially devastating effect. You'll find that in even the largest Apocalypse games, it will take a surprisingly short amount of time to get set up and ready for action. An Apocalypse battle is played across a number of turns, where players get to control their models and wage glorious tabletop warfare. To keep things organized, each turn is arranged into phases where specific things happen. The phases of a turn are the initiative phase, the orders phase, the action phase, and the damage phase. Let's take a look at each. In the initiative phase, players determine who will act first in every other phase of the turn. Sometimes having the initiative is a blessing, other times it's a curse. As you play, you'll learn how to take advantage of shifting fortunes as initiative passes between players. An initiative roll is simple. Both players roll a 12-sided dice to see who has the initiative for the duration of the turn. The player who wins the roll-off will be the first to act in each of the following phases that turn. Taking command of an apocalypse army is an incredibly interactive experience, enabling you to issue different orders to the detachments under your command and react to events as they unfold on the battlefield. In the orders phase, the players draw their command asset cards and issue orders to each of their detachments. The phase is broken down into 4 steps. First up, check to see if any units from a detachment are out of the command range of their commander. This isn't likely in the first turn of the game, but as your army maneuvers around the battlefield and takes casualties, you'll find it happening. Units which become isolated in this manner are out of command and are at risk of becoming routed or destroyed in the damage phase. Any units that were set up off the battlefield as tactical reserves have the opportunity to move onto the battlefield from outflanking or concealed positions, or even teleporting directly into the fray. Each player draws up to 10 command assets cards, depending on how many warlords they have in their apocalypse army. In this step, the players secretly choose one of 3 orders to be issued to each of their detachments by placing the appropriate order marker face down next to that detachment's commander. The order issued to each detachment will determine what actions the units can make in this turn's action phase. Once all orders have been issued, the players then flip over their order markers to reveal the order their detachments will carry out. As the name suggests, the action phase is where all the fighting happens. This is the part of the game where you get to use all the massive guns and brutal melee weapons in your army. In this phase, starting with the player who has the initiative, the players alternate selecting a detachment from their army and carrying out its order. When a detachment is activated, all of its units perform the order they have been issued. The advance order is the most flexible order. Units in a detachment that have been issued the advance order can move and then either make a shoot action or a fight action if they are in base contact with an enemy unit. Powerful, super heavy war machines such as Imperial Knights, Stompas, and Titans can perform both actions. The aimed fire order prevents units from moving, but offers a bonus to hit rolls when making shoot actions. If a unit with the aimed fire order finds itself in base contact with the enemy before it gets to shoot, it can still fight, but will suffer a penalty to their hit rolls. So you can see that the aimed fire order comes with an inherent risk against armies that like to fight up close. But the ability for your units to deliver punishingly accurate volleys at range can often outweigh the danger. The assault order enables units to move, doubling the move characteristic on their data sheet when they do so, then make a fight action. The assault order is unsurprisingly the go-to order for the most aggressive, melee-oriented detachments. Once all of the units in a detachment have performed their actions, the order marker is removed and their opponent then selects a detachment to activate. When resolving shoot or fight actions, pick an enemy unit within range of the attacking unit's weapons or in base contact with them. A 6-sided dice is then rolled for each attack being made, dependent on the size of the unit and the weapons being used. The minimum roll required to hit is shown on the unit's data sheet. If you score a hit, you will then need to roll a 12-sided dice to see if the unit successfully wounds the target. The attacking weapon's strength against tanks, or SAT characteristic, is used when targeting big units like monsters and vehicles. Otherwise, its strength against personnel, or SAP characteristic, is used. For each successful roll to wound on the target unit, a small blast marker is placed next to it. If a small blast marker has already been assigned to the unit, it is replaced with a large blast marker instead. No matter how many blast markers a unit amasses, it remains fully operational for the duration of the action phase, meaning that your favorite miniatures will always get a chance to make their mark on the battle, even if they are targeted for destruction early in the game. Just remember to keep those blast markers in place as your unit moves around. The damage phase sees wounded warriors succumb to their wounds, critically damaged vehicles grind to a halt, and once courageous soldiers flee for their lives. Yeah, it's time to see what happens with all those blast markers. Units that have accrued one or more blast markers earlier in the turn are now at risk of being destroyed or routed from the battlefield. The damage phase is broken down into 3 stages. If any units still have an out-of-command marker, they are routed and count as destroyed if they have any blast markers. Starting with the player who has the initiative, a saving throw must be made for each blast marker assigned to any of their units. If the result of the roll is equal to or higher than the unit's save characteristic, the saving throw has been successful and the damage is prevented. Saving throws are resolved by rolling a 12-sided dice, offering superior odds for each small blast marker and a 6-sided dice for each large blast marker. For each saving throw that is failed, a damage marker is placed next to the unit. If the number of damage markers next to a unit is equal to more than half its wounds characteristic, it is critically damaged, and its attacks characteristic is halved for the remainder of the battle. If the number of damage markers next to a unit ever equals its wounds characteristic, that unit is immediately destroyed. It and all the markers next to it are removed from the battlefield. If all units in a detachment are destroyed, that detachment is also said to be destroyed. Any units that have accrued blast markers but have not been completely destroyed will need to take a morale test. To do so, roll a 6-sided dice and add the number of blast markers next to that unit. If the result is more than the unit's leadership characteristic, the test is failed and a new damage marker is placed beside the unit. On the flip side, if you pass the test, nothing further happens. The conclusion of the damage phase heralds the end of the turn. Unless the battle length or victory conditions described in the mission have been met, another turn will now begin, starting with the initiative phase. Now that you know how to unleash the apocalypse, it's time to muster your legions and prepare for a whole new era of cataclysmic warfare on the battlefields of the 41st millennium.